Ta-ta! Hello friends, how are you doing? I'm doing great because I just started learning something new. I love learning and it never stops. Welcome to another episode of Art Dictionary. Yeah! As I promised in my previous video, I'm gonna be talking about pigments. So grab your yellow marker or whatever marker you use for sketching and start drawing the letter P with me. After drawing the letter P, we're also gonna draw some pigments on it. Cause in these Art Dictionary videos, we don't just draw the initial letter of the word, but we also decorate the letter with something related. But what do pigments actually look like? And what are actually pigments? Well, first of all, I researched it a little bit on Google Images, and under the microscope, pigments look like little leaves with sharp edges, like sharp, jaggedy edged leaves. So, what are they and why are they important in art? Pigments, basically, are colors themselves. I mean, they are in everything. Everything that has a color has pigments. There are biological pigments that give color to all of the living things like people and animals and insects and plants and all that. Pigments are like these tiny little things in all of us, and they create our colors. Other types of pigments are the ones that we use for painting. Some of those pigments are artificial, which means humans made them. And some of them are natural, which means humans collected them from nature. What did they collect? I guess pretty much anything like, I don't know, dirt and sand and stones, and they grinded up stones and made pigments out of them, and maybe plants and I don't know, maybe seashells, like all kinds of different stuff. They collected from nature and they created all different kinds of paints with them. And I'm almost done drawing the pigments on my P. That sounded cool. I got the pigments on my P. And as you can see, they kind of look like leaves, but with jaggedy and sharp edges. And because that's how they look like to me when I looked at their pictures under the microscope. But if you want, better yet, you can research them yourself and see how pigments look like under the microscope. Alright, I'm almost done with my sketch. So, I'm almost ready to start drawing over my sketch with my black marker. Since these pigments are kind of small and they're kind of detailed, I want to use my thin black marker to draw the pigments. But for the big letter P, I'm gonna use my thick black marker as usual. If I try to use my thick black marker for the pigments, I'm sure I'm gonna lose some details because they're not gonna look as crisp, and I want to really keep those details like jaggedy edges and all that. I'm also drawing all of the pigments first, and then I'm gonna move on to my letter. The reason is, I want these pigments to look in front of my letter, like they're growing on it, or they're just stuck on it. Also, if you're paying attention, I drew a few pigments on the ground as well, so that I can create a sense of environment in my drawing. It's like pigments are growing on this letter P, and they're sometimes, fall off to the ground like leaves in the autumn. And also, I'm gonna color all of these pigments with a different color because that's the most fun part. Since we know now what pigments are, we can start thinking about how colors and paints are made. Like there are many different kinds of colors and paints, like there are watercolors, there's oil paints, and there's gouache, and there's crayons, and there are pastels, and they're like markers, and they're like all kinds of paints and colors. So they all have pigments in them, but what makes them different is what keeps those pigments together, which is called a binder, like a bond between those pigments. And each type of paint or color has a different kind of binder in it. Like watercolors dissolve with water because they're bound with water. They're maybe got wet and then compressed and dried up or something. But, they dissolve in water. But oil paint don't dissolve in water because oil and water don't mix. So the pigments in oil paint are bound together with oil. I hope you learned one or two things about pigments, and I hope to see you in the next lesson.